So I'm leaving the meeting. I'm leaving the meeting and I'm going along with what they're saying just so that it doesn't get any more uncomfortable for me, and I don't want to be confrontational, but I knew that I was done. I just I hated the fact that it had come to that. Um, I need to clarify something. So, when I made the statement that I didn't want my family member to one up me, I need to explain. My family member gave me an ultimatum. She said, either you go to the brothers or I will. And I didn't appreciate that because it's like someone going to a club and turning you in for, breaking a rule, and they're no longer members. My feeling was, why do you have any loyalty to this organization? Why do you have any loyalty? Because even with everything that had happened, she had gone through her own personal hell. And as I mentioned before, I do think it's a type of, Stockholm syndrome. I do think that it's a type of thing that they're still kind of hoping that maybe if they continue to show some type of allegiance to this cult, that they'll have a chance. Because I really believe that my aunt still believes that there's an Armageddon. So I don't want to go too far down that road, but that's really interesting when you think about all of the techniques that have been used. And again, I really, really believe that the governing body and those at that level, they have to know what they're doing, because there are so many things that they do that are completely based on mind control techniques, and all you have to do is study it. So again, when I started studying it, when I got degrees, and I started, and I'm not even talking about my second year. I started hitting on information that I would have never found out about had I not gotten my education. And again, I studied world religion. I studied human behavior. I studied philosophy. I have talked with people. I have friends that are involved in a lot of different things. So, learning about things, being involved in organizations and with people from all different backgrounds, and being fearless enough that you're like, I'm going to get as much education as I can because I want knowledge. Knowledge is something that no one can take from you. But if you don't have it and they do, there's a lot of people that will use it as a weapon. And unfortunately, in big groups that have motives of control, because they need to have as many people following their beliefs as possible, they're going to use all types of techniques to keep their members. They need to show retention. They have mission statements that they have to fulfill. I don't want to digress too much. So after my meeting, they said, well, you should go visit your grandparents. I never forget this. And I was like, because I wasn't living with my grandparents. Um, and I hadn't seen them in a while, and I guess they were concerned about what was going on. So I remember they actually stopped by my grandparents' house. They like drove, because no decisions were made. They were trying to see if I would consider coming back to Kingdom Hall. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. But I never forget the look on my grandmother's face when they dropped me off, because she knew I hadn't been to the Kingdom Hall in a long time. All of a sudden, there's two elders that are, are good friends with my grandfather. They're not coming in, and they know I haven't gone to the Kingdom Hall in a long time. So my grandmother's like, "Why are they dropping you off here?" So she knew something, but I forgot to mention, I forgot to mention just an interesting situation that happened to me when I decided to leave my grandparents' house. This is a reoccurring theme that I've heard in a lot of the videos that have been heartfelt about the difficulties of disappointing your family members when you decide that you don't want to be involved in this cult anymore. You're not at fault for loving your family, but the fact that this cult makes your parents or your grandparents or your aunts or your uncles mistreat you and try to align the love of family with the religion, which are two separate things. You get emotional manipulation that is unfair. So I decided to leave, and my grandmother was upset, and she was trying to talk to me, and I said, I think that it's best that I move, and I'm in the process of doing that. I already have secured a place, and I was packing up my stuff, and my grandmother lost it, absolutely lost it. My grandmother's a really short lady, small lady, and I was tall like my father, and she grabs me and she says, "You're not leaving. You're not going anywhere. They're not gonna love you in the world like we do. They're gonna eat you up and spit you out. They're not gonna love you." And she started grabbing me and hitting me all over my face. But it wasn't to really hurt me. It was her trying to emotionally manipulate me. But I knew that it wasn't malicious as much as it was, she was completely mind controlled. She was associating my rejection of the religion with my rejection of her. My grandmother and my grandparents and my parents latently felt, that if I walked away from the religion that they had raised me in from the time I was born, that they had done something wrong. Because there was no way that I could actually be a good person and be intelligent and live a good life if I wasn't going to be a part of that organization. And it was mind-blowing to me because it was like a light, just how closed, how black and white, how confining a life I had actually been a part of. I didn't have freedom to be my own person. I didn't have freedom to think for myself. I couldn't make a decision that went against what they did. And it was like, this is not the life that I want for myself. So, getting back to the disfellowshipping. So, I was done. They dropped me off. I spent time with my grandparents. They didn't ask me anything. I think my grandmother knew. My grandfather just played it off. Just talked to me. I went in, it was more like a family visit. Really, again, didn't have the contextual background of the JW. Um, so after that, I went on about my business. So about 2 weeks later, they called me and they asked if I could meet with them. And I said, no. So basically, let me rephrase that. They had a time scheduled and they asked if I could come. They had scheduled a meeting. And they said, we still haven't made a decision, but we need to meet with you and see where you are. And I was done with the judicial committee meetings. So I said, no, not going to do that. But I'll get back to you. So another 2 weeks comes by, and they call me again, and I let it go to voicemail. And they call me again the next week, and I let it go to voicemail. So I was like, well, I can do this for the rest of my life. I'm done. So 3 weeks after that, I come home from work and I have a certified letter. It was my first certified letter ever. And I thought, did I win money? I didn't know what it was. Then, I just saw it was like a card on the front that I had to sign and mail it back. This was a long time ago. They actually have a different way of doing things now. When I ripped it off, it's, when I saw that it was the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, I knew what it was. So I opened it up, and I'll never forget it. So I'm, blah, 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 based on our assessment of this particular situation, as of blah, 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 you are, and then in caps, disfellowshipped, from the Christian congregation. And then it goes into all this legal talk about you have a week to dispute, and I'm not sure I'm using the right words, but they give you a week to appeal the disfellowshipping decision. And I read it all the way to the end. I ripped it up and I threw it away. And I, out of respect for my grandmother more so than my grandfather, but I went to my grandparents' house the next day after work, and I told them I was disfellowshipped. And I told my family, and that was it. But nothing changed in my life because I was already out of it, and I had already, gotten away from the majority of my family and had nothing really to do with them. That wasn't the way that I would have wanted it, but I realized that if I was to have a life of my own, that because they made me make a choice, that I was going to do it with my eyes open. And I did. I got an apartment. I went and enrolled in school. And I want to make a few things clear. I've listened to my videos, and I'm sort of self-critical, so pardon me. But I want to make a few things clear. It wasn't this, I had it all figured out. I didn't have, doubts about different things. I never had a doubt about leaving the cult. So that's one thing that's always been 100% on a straight road. I've never doubted myself. I've never, had any conflict. Once I realized what I had been a part of, and literally it was really no fault of my own. It's really terrible that, you suffer so much for something that you just did because your family raised you in it and literally forced you to be a part of it. And that's what I tell like a lot of my friends that are trying to understand, and even my partner, because he's not a JW, so and he has no, he has no association with that, but he's a really great person. So, it works. But, you have to explain why you have this whole part of your life that, is like, listen, my parents ain't coming to the wedding, or they're not going to come to events that we have, or I had, but by this time I have people that are like my family. But it's a process. It's a process of figuring things out and understanding how you are going to make peace with it. But it wasn't easy for me. I had to make a lot of mistakes, and you know, I went to school, I stopped for some time. So it's really interesting to me to see how far I've gone, because when I first started, I did not just, stay in school. I dropped out. I don't even know if you would technically call it dropping out. I didn't go for a year. And then when I went, now I have several degrees and several certifications. So I have quite a few. But I wasn't like some straight person who, didn't deal with the ramifications of coming from a highly controlled cult. There is so when I listen to people that do videos and talk about some of the things that they're going through, I completely understand, because I had to go through it myself. And it's a path. It's a path. You have to go through it to understand that it's almost like you have PST. You go through, did I say PST? PSD, I'm sorry. You go through a lot of different things in yourself that only someone that has had a similar background can understand. I felt isolated at times. I felt resentful because, again, if you decide, listen, I'm just going to go out here and create my own life and create my own family. But a lot of times when you do that, if you're not with someone who is a JW, they're not going to understand why your family isn't involved in certain things, or you're going to want to pick up the phone and call your parent, or pick up the phone and call people that you knew your whole entire life. And it hurts. It makes you feel resentful. And that's the part that I want to join the movement and talk about, because if I wanted to be a witness, I would be a witness. I did not sign up to give up my family because I didn't agree with their doctrine. And that's the part that I think is unfair. I got baptized when I was 16 years old. I was not legally an adult. I feel like, and I left as soon as I started to grow in myself, and I started to educate myself, and I started to become more cognitively aware of things that were redundant and things that were just false in the doctrine. And they couldn't hold it over my head that if I don't stay in this cult, I'm going to lose my family. I mean, there's a lot of people that works, but I wasn't wired that way. I'm not going to live a life to appease you and I'm not believing in it. And that's not fair. Everyone deserves the right of self-definition. Every person deserves to create the road in the life that they believe in. No one should force someone to be a part of something that they don't agree with. But that doesn't mean that I have to give up my family. That doesn't mean that I'm a terrible person because I don't agree with you. Let me tell you what religion is. Religion is man trying to interpret God. That's all religion is. And all these people walking around with these different interpretations. And it causes so many divisions. But I'm not here to criticize religion as much as I'm here to criticize cults like Scientology, like Jehovah's Witnesses, where they take it one step up and they make it about all these different mind control techniques, all of the emotional manipulation, all of the shunning, to the point where I remember listening to a story of a video of a young girl who, not, and when I say young, I mean she must have been about 18 or 19. She lived with her mom that was a Jehovah's Witness, and when she got up enough courage to tell her mother that, listen, I just don't agree with this, and I'd like to have the right to practice something else. Her mother packs up her stuff and kicks her out the house. And I'm like, she's not shooting heroin in her veins. She's not, bringing home men and taking them in and out your house. She hasn't stole money from you. She just said, listen, I actually have a different belief system than you do. And you're like, well, you know what? Guess what? Because you think that, I can't have a relationship with you. And you're going to have to get out of the house. So, heaven forbid you're a kid and you're growing up in a JW family and you're like 14 or 15 years old and you say, listen, I'd like the chance to actually study some other stuff. And if you push that, you're putting your whole life at risk in terms of, and I've heard stories where kids have been kicked out of their homes. Your child is just trying to explore the world around them and research and figure out what they want. They may not want what you want in terms of what they believe. That doesn't make them a bad person. That doesn't mean that you can't love them and you can't have a relationship with them. And that's the part that really gets to me. Because you can be talking to people that act like they're intelligent and compassionate. But as soon as you start talking about that, all of a sudden compassion and intelligence and logic and reason go out of the door. I just found myself. And again, that's why I love the butterfly. That's why I love that even though I can't show my face, that I can tell the story. And like I said, I'm not doing this because I care about how many clicks or how many views I get. If I get 3 views, I'm like, wow, 3 people actually listen to me because I can't show my face. But what I want to say is that there were times when I was angry. There was times when I felt alone. There was times when I didn't know what I wanted to believe. And that's probably the reason that I, studied world religion, because I wanted to understand where all these beliefs came from. And it was, a big deal for me to research it. And the more that I researched and the more that I studied and the more information that I had, and I was able to travel and talk to all kinds of people, I was even considering being a cultural anthropologist. And the more information that I was able to come across, and I've been in some incredible places and seeing things that I never thought that I would see. And the more that I actually studied religion, the less that I was Christian or any of these organized religions. And but that's a separate topic. But when I really started to understand what was behind a lot of these belief systems, I was absolutely blown away. And that's the thing, like, it's okay for you not to know, and it's okay for you to explore. It's okay to go to different beliefs and just go as a visitor. There's nothing wrong with that because you're trying to figure out who you are. And once you walk away from the confines of a mind controlling cult, you give yourself a chance to find what you think and what you believe. But I encourage anyone that's listening to get past the anger, get past the condemnation, and use their condemnation, use their abuse, use their shunning as your fuel to rise. See, I used all the stuff that happened to me as a motivator. They wanted me to fail. And I know people out there know what I'm talking about. As soon as you disassociate yourself or your disfellowship, they're waiting for your fall. They're waiting for your mistakes so you can say, see, that's what happens when you leave Jehovah. That's what happens when you leave the confines of the Kingdom Hall. Any success that you have, anything that you do, there's always something that comes around where they want to knock you down and they want to make you feel guilty for doing something good. And and that's when I realized how ridiculous these people in this organization are. And it's not to say that there aren't good people. I don't mean to attack the individual person because, again, it's just like with my grandparents, with my grandmother when she was attacking me and saying all this stuff that was basically chapter and verse what they had tried to indoctrinate her with and the members. She thought that she was right. She thought that she was looking out for me. So I can't take it personally. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I get it. My grandmother loved me, and in her opinion, me doing something like rejecting that cult meant that I was putting my life at risk in her eyes. I mean, it was completely false, but that's my point. I have one more video that I want to do, which is my, I guess, drop the mic before I take a 2-week break. It's been really difficult for me to even find time to complete my disfellowshipping story, but I really wanted to do it. There's one more video. I hope that you will stay tuned. I just believe that the universe motivates us at just the right time to do just what's needed to help ourselves and help others. The more that we awaken and pay attention to all of the things that the universe is trying to tell us, the better off we will be as people. The more that we fight against ourselves and fight against our nature and fight against our intuition, the more that we suffer. And one of the main reasons that I thought I could add my voice to this movement is to say that we don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You're not alone. And I hope that somewhere my story has meant something to someone. Please stay tuned and have a great evening.